Hi folks, my name is Ravi. The story I'm about to tell you is about a little kingdom known as Eternia and was ruled by an evil king in the form of King Galactus. Ruler of many, master of none, incompetent in some respects, but he ruled and destroyed a number of kingdoms along the way. And in that process he amassed a significant fortune. His most trusty confidant was his treasurer. His treasurer would give him daily reports every day as to how much fortune he has made. And it was always a big figure. Until one day, the treasurer came over and said to the king, "Your Highness, unfortunately, sir, you are missing 10 to 15 crowns." The king spat out his food as he was dining with his family and said, "This is absolutely ridiculous. How dare you give me such grave news? Have you checked all your facts? Have you done enough reports and analysis?" The treasurer then agreed he would do that. He went back to his office and did exactly that. The treasurer looked at every single aspect of his king's fortune and went back to the king and said, "Your Highness, I've done some analysis. I've started crunching some numbers. This is what I think you need to do. I think you need to let go and chop a few heads along the way. The kingdom itself is quite an expensive kingdom. I think you can let go about 50% of them." So the king said, "Right, absolutely. Send my heralds, send my knights, and let them go and kill off 50% of my kingdom. No problem, it's just a couple families, a couple kids along the way, who cares?" The kingdom was now 50% less, and the king was happy. And he assumed that he was going to go walk back to a vast fortune once again. Alas, the treasurer returned to the king's office and said, "Your Highness, while there might be 50% less citizens in our kingdom, unfortunately, we are still losing funds." The king exclaims and says, "How dare you, treasurer? How dare you give me such bad news once again? What do you expect me to do now? How do I recover these funds?" The treasurer then looks at him meekly and says, "Your Highness, I implore you, you might need to lose a couple more heads." So then the king says, "I can let go of about 90% of my warriors, heralds, and knights. They've done their job for me already. It's not like I need them again. Who's going to stand in my way?" So he takes his best herald and says, "You are my guy. You're going to stick around with me for a very long time, sir. But I want you to do one thing for me." The herald looks at him and says, "What would you like me to do, Your Highness? I'll do anything for you, sir. I led your army into battle over 100 times. I'll do anything for you, sir." The king looks at him in response and says, "You need to kill off every other herald, every other warrior, and every other knight in my army right now. You have 6 hours to do this in." The herald looked at him in shock and dismay, but knew that his loyalty for the king was the only thing that mattered to him. So the herald, as powerful and as strong as he was able to conquer his very own army that has led him into victory in multiple battles and killed off all of them, 90% to be precise. The treasurer with glee reports this to the king. But there's unfortunately a small little clip note in which the treasurer was whimpering at the possibility of having to read. The king asked him, "What's wrong now, Mr. Treasurer? What are you upset about?" The treasurer says, "Unfortunately, even though the 90% of your guards and 50% of your kingdom is gone, you're still losing money, sir." The king hits the table once again and says, "I've got no time for this. Solve this problem. I better have my money back tomorrow." So the treasurer then decides to instruct the last remaining herald to do his bidding. The herald then decides to take off the remaining 50% of the citizens and kills off every single one of them. Unfortunately, the treasurer had to go back and give the unfortunate news to the king. And now you've got a kingdom, 90% less of your guards, and 100% less of your citizens. It's just you, your wives, and your kids. And me, of course, as the treasurer. Then the king said, right, how are our financials looking now, Mr. Treasurer? The treasurer unfortunately says, sir, you're still losing money. Everybody is gone, from the kingdom to the guards, just me, the herald, you and your family. I think it's time for you to let go of your family as well. The king looks at them and says, well, I didn't like them much anyway, so you can do what you want with them. Chop them up one by one, Game of Thrones style. So, the herald with reluctance, having served the king and his wives and his children, had to kill off every single one of his family members. The king was then breathing a sigh of relief, saying, at least I have my wealth back. Unfortunately, the treasurer was nowhere to be seen. He was missing, you see. Then the treasurer came back to say, Your Highness, unfortunately, while everybody else is gone with the exception of myself, the herald, and you're still losing money. The king literally hit his head and couldn't understand why he's still losing money when everybody else is gone all around him. The treasurer then said, I think you need to get rid of the one herald. He's by far the most expensive resource you have, even though he's quite valuable. So the king with reluctance said, okay, I'm going to ask the herald to do it. Mr. Herald, please come into my office. Thank you for your years of service and having gotten rid of pretty much the entire kingdom, my wives and my children. In fact, I'm more grateful that you got rid of my wives and my kids. I need you to do one last thing for me. The herald with glee said, absolutely, I'll do anything for you, Your Highness. I need you to fall on your laser spear. The herald looked in shock and dismay, but nevertheless was a great soldier and obeyed his king no matter what the circumstances are. And he fell on his spear. The king said, right, surely this must all solve the problem. I must get my net worth back. There's absolutely nothing that's going to compromise it. And then the king started looking for the treasurer. Couldn't find him anywhere. Went everywhere from one corridor to the next and knocked on his treasurer's office. His treasurer then opened the door. And as he opened the door, an entire hill full of treasure, coins, and a massive fortune fell on the king. And the king couldn't believe it. He said, what is all this? How does it all get in here? And the treasurer said, you see, I was the one that was pilfering your funds this whole time, right under your nose. But everything else, that was done by your hand. You killed everybody all around you with the exception of me. The king took out a sword and pointed it at the herald, and then slowly dropped his sword and acknowledged that he was right. You see, ladies and gentlemen, you can have all the wealth in the world, but unfortunately, it's your kingdom, your friends and your family that are going to help you stay at the top. It's just the king and his treasurer right now and a whole lot of wealth.